A Persian soldier survived Plataea. He was found 3 days after the battle wandering the marshes near the Asopus River. No weapon, no armor. He was one of maybe 300 men left from an army that had numbered in the hundreds of thousands. He never spoke about what he saw inside that camp. His name appears in no record anywhere. The Greeks never bothered to write it down. That single detail tells you everything you need to know about what truly happened at Plataea. You know the story of 300 Spartans who held a mountain pass and died to the last man. You've seen the movies, the statues, heard the speeches. Come back with your shield or on it. The hot gates. Leonidas. The ultimate sacrifice. But what you haven't been told is what came after. Because here's what actually happened. 11 months after Thermopylae, the Spartans came back. Not 300 of them. 10,000. And they didn't come to die beautifully. They came to collect a debt in a currency the Persian Empire had never once encountered before. The Battle of Plataea, fought in the summer of 479 BC, ended with so many Persian bodies that ancient sources say the fields were unpassable for days. And yet almost nobody talks about it. Thermopylae has a blockbuster film, statues, a cultural legacy stretching across 2,500 years. Plataea gets a paragraph in most history textbooks. Sometimes less. There's a reason for that. Civilizations preserve what they choose to remember. The Greeks wanted to remember the sacrifice, the loss that looked like nobility. What they were slower to memorialize was the part where they won, completely, totally, and with a precision that left the Persian Empire unable to ever again mount an invasion of mainland Greece. And before we go any further, if you're watching Crimson Archive for the first time, consider hitting like and subscribing. History like this deserves more than one viewing. Now, back to Plataea, and the part that changes how you see Thermopylae entirely. We're going to walk through the real story. Not the version where Greeks are heroes and Persians are villains. The actual version, the one with mud and starvation and commanders who couldn't agree on anything, and a single stone thrown at exactly the right moment that altered the course of Western civilization. Let's start from where the legend ended and reality began. 3 days after Thermopylae, Xerxes walked the battlefield. He found Leonidas's body among the Greek dead. Herodotus tells us what happened next. Xerxes ordered the head severed and mounted on a stake. The body was crucified. Hold that image for a moment, not for the horror of it, but for what it reveals about Xerxes' state of mind. Persian kings did not typically desecrate the bodies of fallen enemy commanders. Cyrus the Great had ordered honorable burials for his opponents. Darius I had done the same. Mutilation of a fallen king was not Persian custom. This was personal. Leonidas and his 300 had cost Xerxes somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 men just to hold a pass that should have been overrun within hours. That delay had allowed the Greek fleet to maneuver at Artemisium. It had bought Athens time to evacuate its citizens. It had, in ways Xerxes couldn't fully calculate yet, restructured the entire architecture of the war. The desecration of the body was his answer to that humiliation. It was also a message to every Greek city-state still watching, still undecided. This is what resistance earns you. The message landed, but not the way Xerxes intended. The Persian army rolled south. Athens, already evacuated on the counsel of the Athenian commander Themistocles, was occupied within weeks. The temples on the Acropolis, the predecessor of the Parthenon, the treasury buildings, the sacred precincts of Athena herself, were burned to the ground. This was not incidental looting. Persian commanders ordered the systematic destruction of sacred sites as deliberate policy. It was the ancient world's equivalent of burning a nation's identity down to the soil. The physical city was ash. But something particular happens when you burn a city whose population is still alive and watching from ships in the harbor. You don't destroy their will. You concentrate it. Here's what most documentaries leave out entirely. After Thermopylae, the Greek alliance nearly collapsed. Sparta and its Peloponnesian allies had a plan. Build a wall across the Isthmus of Corinth, fortify it, surrender everything north of that line including Athens to Persia, and defend only the Peloponnese. Strategically, it wasn't irrational. The isthmus was narrow. The Spartans were the finest land army in the world and could hold that position indefinitely. The Athenians, floating on their fleet with no home to return to, had a rather different view of this arrangement. Themistocles delivered an ultimatum that ancient sources describe as stunning in its directness. If Sparta and the Peloponnesian League refused to fight for mainland Greece, Athens would sail its entire fleet, the largest in the Greek world, west to Sicily. They would found a new city. They would simply leave. And without the Athenian fleet, Persia's navy could sail around any wall and land troops anywhere in the Peloponnese it chose. The alliance held, but only just. And that exchange tells you everything about the pressure Pausanias was walking into when he took command. The number you need to hold in your head is not 300. The number is 5,000. 5,000 Spartiates, full Spartan citizen soldiers, marched north to Plataea. This was not a ceremonial force. This was the mobilization of virtually the entire Spartan warrior class, something that had no precedent in Spartan history. Sparta had never committed this many of its core soldiers to a single campaign beyond its own borders. To understand what 5,000 Spartiates meant, you have to understand what a Spartiate actually was. A Spartan boy entered the agoge, the state training system, at age 7. He left home. He slept in barracks. He was trained to treat pain, deprivation, cold, and prolonged suffering as a baseline condition of existence. For 13 years he learned to fight, to move as a single unit, to hold a shield wall under pressure that would cause most human beings to break and run. The boys who completed it became something the ancient world regarded as a category entirely apart from ordinary soldiers. Each of those 5,000 was flanked by approximately 7 helots, agricultural laborists serving as light infantry and support. Conservative estimates put the total Spartan Laconian contingent at Plataea at around 40,000 people. Add 8,000 Athenian hoplites, 5,000 Corinthians, and contingents from dozens of smaller city-states across Greece. The Hellenic League at Plataea numbered, by Herodotus's accounting, somewhere between 80,000 and 110,000 men. The commander of this force was Pausanias. He was not a king. He was a regent, ruling on behalf of Leonidas's young son Pleistarchus, who was too young to lead. His uncle had died at Thermopylae with a spear through him and his head displayed on a stake in a Persian camp. Ancient sources give us very little of Pausanias's interior life. What we have are his decisions, and those decisions reveal a man operating under a kind of pressure that has no real modern equivalent. He was responsible for avenging a dead king, managing a fractious multi-city coalition, and defeating the largest army ever assembled in the Western world. All at the same time. He marched his force north to the foothills of Mount Cithaeron near the small Boeotian town of Plataea and took up position on elevated, broken ground. Across the Asopus River on the flat plains below, Mardonius was waiting. Mardonius was not a fool. He was a veteran commander who had served under Darius I, survived a catastrophic storm off the coast of Athos that had destroyed 300 ships under his command, and rebuilt his entire career afterward. He was related to the royal family by blood and marriage and had pushed aggressively for this campaign. Some ancient sources suggest the invasion of Greece was largely his idea. But Mardonius had a problem no tactical skill could solve. His army was devastating on flat open ground. His cavalry was possibly the finest in the world. His Persian infantry, particularly the immortals, were among the most disciplined soldiers alive. But the Greeks had taken the hills, and Mardonius could not make them come down. So for 11 days, nothing decisive happened. 11 days. That's not a dramatic detail being glossed over. That is the reality of ancient warfare. 2 massive armies watching each other across a river, each waiting for the other to make an error. What broke the standoff at Plataea was not a battle cry or a charge. It was thirst. The Greek position near Cithaeron had one critical vulnerability. A single spring called the Gargaffian Spring supplied water to the entire army. Mardonius knew this. His cavalry began a systematic campaign of harassment, intercepting supply convoys through the mountain passes, burning food stores, contaminating smaller water sources. This wasn't battlefield maneuvering. It was attrition. He was attempting to starve and dehydrate an army of over 80,000 men into abandoning its position. It was working. The cavalry commander leading many of these raids was named Mecistius, described by Herodotus as the most admired man in the Persian army, physically enormous, wearing gold-scaled armor beneath his outer garments. In one engagement near the Greek lines, his horse was struck by an arrow and through him. Mecisteus landed and was immediately surrounded by Athenians. They couldn't kill him at first. The gold-scaled armor turned everything aside. It was only when someone drove a blade through the visor of his helmet that he went down. The Greeks paraded his body on a cart along their lines. Herodotus says the sight had a visible effect on morale. Soldiers broke position just to look at the body of a man who had seemed untouchable 48 hours before. The Persians, when they saw him displayed, cut their horses' manes in mourning. The sound coming from the Persian camp that day, according to Herodotus, was grief rather than preparation. Small things. But small things accumulate. Then Mardonius's cavalry did something decisive. They located the Gargantuan spring and destroyed it. Collapsed the banks, threw in debris, made it completely unusable. Days later, a supply convoy threading through the Cithaeron passes was intercepted and burned. 80,000 men with no water and no incoming food. Pausanias called a council. The decision that emerged was strategically correct and almost a catastrophic disaster at the same time. They would execute a night withdrawal to a secondary position closer to Plataea itself, which had better water access. The army would move in 3 columns. Spartans and Tegeans on the right, Athenians on the left, the rest of the Greek allies in the center, falling back toward the town. Night movements with armies of this size in the ancient world were genuinely dangerous. No radio communications. No standardized signals beyond horns and torches. Moving 80,000 men through darkness in 3 separate columns without losing cohesion required every commander at every level to execute exactly what they were supposed to, exactly when they were supposed to. That is not what happened. One Spartan commander refused to move. His name was Amompharetus, and he commanded Alochos, a unit of Spartiate soldiers. When the withdrawal order reached him, he picked up a large stone with both hands, set it at Pausanias's feet, and declared, according to Herodotus, that this was his vote on the question of retreating from the enemy. He was not going. What followed was an argument conducted in whispers in total darkness. While the rest of the army had already begun to move, Pausanias could not leave Amompharetus and his men behind. Abandoning Spartiates on a battlefield, even one where nothing was currently happening, was not something Spartan culture permitted under any circumstance. But every minute spent arguing was another minute the withdrawal unraveled. The argument lasted until nearly dawn. Eventually Amompharetus moved, slowly, at the rear of the Spartan column, making his contempt for the whole affair visible through every deliberate step while technically complying with the order. By the time Pausanias finally had his force moving, the Athenians on the left had received conflicting signals and were waiting for clarification that never came. The Allied center had mostly completed their withdrawal. The Greek army, which was supposed to pull back as a single coordinated force, was now scattered across the landscape. The center near Plataea, the Athenians somewhere between positions, and the Spartans and Tegeans still working their way down from the heights, separated from everyone else. Across the river, Mardonius had cavalry scouts who had been watching all of this through the pre-dawn dark. Dawn broke. Mardonius looked across the Esopus. The Greek camp was partially abandoned. The heights were half empty. Scattered formations were moving in what appeared to be disorder. From where he stood, it looked like a panicked retreat. An army breaking apart and running. He crossed the river. It was the last major decision of his life. The Persian cavalry struck the Spartan rear guard first. Amompharetus's unit, still moving with deliberate slowness, still making its point. The Spartan column halted. Pausanias sent a runner to the Athenians. "We need you on our right." The Athenians turned toward the Spartans and ran directly into the Theban hoplites fighting for Persia, who had been advancing on the left. The Athenians had their own battle now. The Spartans were entirely alone. What followed is one of the most documented and debated sequences in all of ancient military history, because Herodotus describes something that doesn't quite make sense on the surface. Pausanias ordered his men to hold position and wait while Persian arrows were already falling among them. He was waiting for omens, specifically waiting for the sacrifice of a goat to produce favorable signs. The Tegeans, positioned directly beside the Spartans, apparently could not maintain this posture. They were taking casualties. They advanced without orders. Then the omens were favorable, and Pausanias ordered the advance. The Spartan phalanx in motion is something ancient sources struggle to describe in ways that fully convey what it meant to be standing on the receiving end of it. Picture approximately 5,000 men in tight formation, each carrying a large circular shield, the aspis, interlocked with the shield of the man to his left. Each man armored in bronze. Each carrying a spear roughly 7 feet long. The formation typically 8 ranks deep, meaning men behind are pushing forward at every point of contact. The formation advances at a walk, not a sprint. You cannot maintain a shield wall at a dead run. They moved steadily, under control, adjusting to terrain, keeping the line intact. They walked into the Persian infantry. Persian soldiers were not poorly equipped or poorly trained. Their infantry carried shorter spears, weaker shields, and bows. They were effective fighters under the right conditions, particularly when cavalry could screen their flanks and archers could thin an enemy formation before the lines met. What they were now encountering was a formation that did not thin when you shot arrows into it, because the shields overlapped, the men were armored, and the formation kept advancing regardless of casualties because the ranks behind kept pushing forward. The Persian infantry, including units of the immortals, the royal guard themselves, fought back with documented ferocity. Herodotus specifically records that they grabbed Spartan spears with their bare hands and snapped them. They did not break and run. They died where they stood. But they were dying. Mardonius was mounted on a white horse, surrounded by his 1,000-man royal bodyguard, fighting in the middle of the action. This was standard Persian royal military tradition. The commander visible to everyone, leading rather than directing from the rear. As long as Mardonius remained visible and alive, the Persian line held. A Spartan hoplite named Arimnestus, mentioned by name in the ancient sources, which itself tells you the weight of what he did, spotted the Persian general through the chaos of the fighting. He threw a stone. Not a spear. A stone picked up from the ground, thrown with whatever force he could generate. It struck Mardonius and knocked him from his horse. In the crush of combat around him, his royal guard unable to extract him, Mardonius was killed. The effect was immediate and total. The Persian line, which had been holding against everything the Spartans had thrown at it, simply stopped holding. Men who had been grabbing at Spartan spears with their bare hands turned and ran. The phalanx pushed forward into the space where a defensive line had been. On the left, the story was different but the conclusion identical. The Athenians were fighting the Ban hoplites, Greeks who had chosen the Persian side. This was not a mismatch of equipment or training. Hoplites against hoplites. The same formation. The same weapons. Men who in some cases had trained alongside each other before the war divided them. The Bans broke first. Their commanders, the leading families who had committed to the Persian cause, led the retreat. The Ban soldiers followed. The Athenians pursued. The Persian army had a fortified camp on the Esopus, a large wooden stockade that had served as their base of operations throughout the entire campaign. When the battle broke, the survivors ran for it. The gates closed behind them. Tens of thousands of men inside an enclosure. No commander. Mardonius dead somewhere on the field behind them. Secondary commanders who survived were attempting to organize a defense on walls never designed for this situation. The Tegeans reached the stockade first, breached a section of wall, and got inside. The Athenians came next, dismantling sections of the wooden fortifications with the methodical efficiency of men who had been studying siege techniques since Salamis. Then the Spartans arrived. Herodotus's account of what followed inside the camp is one of the moments where ancient sources go briefly quiet in a way that is itself information. He gives casualty estimates, vague ones, extraordinary ones, and moves forward quickly. The numbers he cites suggest that of the Persian force at Plataea, which he places at 300,000, almost certainly an exaggeration, something like 3,000 survived. What we know with certainty is that the fighting inside the camp was not battle. It was the end of an army. Men trapped with no formation, no leadership, and no way out. Greeks entering from multiple breach points. The wooden walls still burning in places when it was finally over. The looting of a Persian royal camp was unlike anything Greek soldiers had seen in their lives. Mardonius had traveled with the full apparatus of Persian royal luxury. Tents with gold and silver fittings. Couches. Storage vessels. Personal treasuries. Spartan soldiers who broke into his personal quarters found furniture and tableware they had no frame of reference for. Pausanias, according to Plutarch, ordered Mardonius's own cooks to prepare a Persian royal feast, then had a standard Spartan meal prepared beside it and showed both to his officers. The contrast, he reportedly said, was the reason Persia had traveled so far to take something the Persians themselves couldn't understand. Whether that story is entirely true or embellished over the telling, the fact that it was told at all says something about how the Greeks processed what they found in that camp. Abundance so complete it read as something else entirely. The treasure from Plataea was distributed in the Greek manner. 1/10 to the sanctuary at Delphi. 1/10 to Zeus at Olympia. The rest divided among the allied cities. Sparta's share made it, for a time, the wealthiest city-state on the Greek mainland. And somewhere in the marshes near the Esopus, a Persian soldier with no weapon and no armor walked in circles for 3 days. One of maybe 300 left from hundreds of thousands. His name was never written down. The Greeks didn't bother. And in that singular mission is the full weight of what happened at Plataea. If this is the kind of history that deserves to be remembered, make sure you're subscribed to Crimson Archive and leave a like. There's a lot more where this came from.